What's up, everyone? My name is Mike with VHS Fitness Reviews, and I did Richard Simmons' Sweatin' to the Oldies Volume 1 3 times a week for a month, and I'm here to tell you all about it, like what parts of the body I worked, and what the difficulty level was, and who it's for, and of course, how many calories I burned. Sweatin' to the Oldies Volume 1 is a low-impact aerobics workout that's set to all of my favorite heart-thumping tunes of the 50s and 60s, tunes that are bound to get you dancing in the streets. It's supposed to be fun and have this nostalgic Happy Days vibe, and it is dance fitness, so it's less functional moves, and it's really just to keep you moving for its duration. That duration is 38 minutes, including the warm-up and the cool-down.
Do you want to do the twist?
The moves flow into each other really well, and there's no instruction that breaks it up. You're just going to hear an audio cue from Richard telling you to move from one move to the other. He might be screaming, but it doesn't get as old as you'd think it was. It's actually kind of endearing most of the time. The only problem is that sometimes you might want instruction, or instruction would actually be really necessary. See, like most of the moves are just there to keep your feet moving, keep your heart rate up, but during the warm-up and during the cool-down, some of these moves would really benefit from instruction, because if you're stretching and you don't know what muscles you're supposed to be stretching, you're just sitting in a funny position, you're not actually stretching. Sweatin' to the Oldies Volume 1 is a very easy workout. It's a workout for everybody, and it says so on the box. On that same box, you're going to find people of all shapes and sizes, and you'll see those people in the tape too. It's really for everyone. And with that comes a very minimal risk of injury. I would say the biggest risk would be a fall injury, but only if you have a disability or an injury you're nursing.
Stop! Is everybody okay?
As long as your heart rate's up, that's the whole point of the thing, is just to get you sweating. In fact, Richard says that the second that it starts.
Let's sweat!
If you want to make it more difficult, you can totally do that too. Just don't go crazy. But there were times where I felt like I wanted it to be more challenging, so I added more jumps, more squats. Maybe instead of just doing a normal march, I did high knees and stuff like that. It was very easy to kind of work those in. And then if I was getting a little winded, just back off a bit. It's so easy to tweak, and that's part of why the difficulty is so low and the risk of injury is so low. I had hurt my shoulder a little bit before starting this, and there are times you have to wave your hands a lot. You know, your leg and arm movements is probably an equal amount of those, and I just didn't wave my arms as much, or I waved it in such a way that it didn't exacerbate my shoulder problem. Over my time with Sweatin' to the Oldies, I burned about 250 calories per session. The highest I ever got was 330, and the lowest I ever got was 180. But 250 is where I averaged out for most of them. I used a Polar H10 chest strap heart rate monitor, which people who are smarter than me say that that's more accurate than a wrist one. If you want, there's a link in the description for the one that I use and all the other fitness crap that I have. But you really do get what you give here. I remember that day where I only burned 180 calories and I was just dragging my feet, I wasn't into it. And that day where it was 330, I remember being really into it and trying my best to kind of keep my heart rate up the whole time and putting that extra effort in.
Take a heart rate. When I say go, ready, set, go!
My average heart rate, including the warm-up and cool-down, the whole thing was 107 BPM. The highest I ever got was 165, and that was kind of a rare occurrence, but you know, it is going to go up and down throughout your whole workout. You can see on the screen here, I have, you know, a pretty typical session of mine with the kind of peaks and troughs there. I think the part where I got the most into it was on the, what is it? It was whatever that, I don't know the song. I can't. I just got copyright strike for that, I'm sure. For muscles worked, because it's low impact and because it's dance-based, it's almost all shoulders and footwork, right? Rotational shoulder stuff, maybe a little bit of this, and then moving your feet. There's one part where you got to get your knees kind of high.
And cross. And pat.
Your knees don't really come up that high most of the time. It's just a lot of marching and a lot of moving, getting that sweat on. You're not going to be sore after it unless you're really, really out of shape, but you're probably not going to be sore because none of your muscles come under a particularly heavy load. It's just getting that sweat on. As for what you'll need, you're just going to need that sweet, sweet body of yours. Yeah, you're going to need your body, and you're going to need a small space to work out in. I work out on a 5x8 mat, and for almost all of the moves, that's actually more than adequate. There's just one section where it's not. It's on the song He's a Rebel, and if you do it as presented, I actually was going off of my mat a little bit, but you just don't have to, you know, it's like you're walking and punching. All you have to do is just like not walk forward as much. But if you're doing it as presented, you're just gonna walk all the way. It's just so goofy doing this without the music playing. For the cast and crew, Richard Simmons is a lot of fun here. I know some people think that he might be annoying, or you'd be afraid that he would really grate on your senses after a while, but it's done in such a way that that doesn't really happen. I'm telling you, they know what they're doing. Whoever put this together, whoever choreographed the whole thing, knew what kind of a personality Richard was, and they don't play it up to a point of where it gets too annoying, or really annoying at all, frankly. I know it's like a really loud and boisterous personality.
Oh, your personality!
But I'm telling you, for most of it, he's just a competent fitness instructor who's very enthusiastic, and there's not too much of that sort of high-pitched wailing that you might associate Richard Simmons with. Everyone in the crew is having such a good time. It's so infectious. Just by the proxy of watching them, you kind of want to have a good time too. And also, because it's dance-based, you can see all these different expressions of the moves, and you can pick up on the ones that you want. Like Anna, she can really work it. It is just a sea of smiling faces and different body types. It really makes anybody feel welcome sort of joining in. There's also Janine from Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, what do you want?
But one of these faces is just slightly more bright than the other ones. This face never frowns, is having such a good time the entire time, and that is Mr. Victor Serrano. Hey, this is Mike from the editing room, and I just gotta show, look at the lift here. Look at the lift that's going on compared to all the other people around him. Do you see this? We are blasting off into the stratosphere, people. Do you understand? Because of his enthusiasm and because of those sweet, sweet moves, he wins Queen of the Crew. The best reason to do Sweatin' to the Oldies Volume 1 is because it's a fun way to burn 200 to 300 calories in a 40-minute time slot. I think it could fit into a lot of people's fitness regimens. Just kind of slot it into that cardio spot, and it'll work for almost anybody. I did it 3 times a week, which might be a little much for this for the long haul, because there's so much to choose from out there now. You're not just stuck with this one tape that you bought for $40, which adjusted for inflation is like $85. Hey, this is Mike from the editing room. You know how I said it would be like $85? I'm gonna throw up. You're not stuck with that one tape. There's so much to choose from. But if you just slot this in once a week, hell, once a month, it's awesome. It's really great. I had a lot of fun with that, I don't know. While I liked Sweatin' to the Oldies Volume 1, there might be some deal breakers for you out there that might make you hit that eject button. First, it's not exactly upstairs neighbor friendly. Depending on your floors, all that marching and all that moving might be a little bit too much for you. I know I've had problems with that in the past when I used to live in an apartment. You know, doing certain moves was basically a no-no. There's no jumping and there's no real hard impacts at all. I mean, the whole thing is low impact, right? But still, all that movement, depending on your floors, depending on your neighbors, you know, I wouldn't consider this to be upstairs neighbor friendly as I would with some other things where there's just not as much footwork. Also, this is obvious, but if the music isn't to your liking, that it's going to be 38 minutes of torture. I didn't think I liked the oldies, and I still don't really, but I was able to tolerate it to begin with, and I really kind of fell into it after a while and started having a really good time. But man, if you don't like the oldies, stay away from this one. Similarly, if you cannot get over Richard Simmons as a personality, if you can't stand his voice, if you can't stand his demeanor, obviously just skip it. It's not going to get any better.
1 calorie a spray! Ah!
While it is accessible to everybody, that doesn't mean it's right for everybody. You might need something harder, right? Your cardio slot might require you to do something more difficult. If you're working endurance, don't do Sweatin to the Oldies. If you need that time for endurance, don't do it because it's not an endurance workout. You're just gonna sweat a bit. It's not going to push you. Maybe you need to burn more than 300 calories in 40 minutes. If it is just about the calories for you right now, then maybe you would skip Sweatin to the Oldies. It might not be for you. Finally, there is a embarrassment factor to some of this. If you work out alone in a room where the shades are closed and no one can see or hear you, there's really no problem with this. But if you get really embarrassed really easily and maybe there's other people around that could either see you or hear you or whatever, you might want to steer clear of this because it really comes down to your comfort with goofiness, right? Like you're going to be doing the monkey, you're going to be doing that it's my party and I'll cry if I want. It just you'll see it on the, it's just, I cringed every time. I still did it. In the beginning, I cringed every time, but at some point I'm like, okay, I'm in here for the long haul. Let's just get into it. And I got into it, but if you can't get over that, man, it doesn't get better. You know, the whole workout is kind of these goofy movements. So if you get embarrassed really easily, it's not going to be for you. Where can you get it? Sweatin to the Oldies is streaming on Amazon Prime, and you could also buy it on DVD on Amazon. But if you're a wacko like me, you can buy it on VHS. There's 1,000 copies on eBay. I mean, it was a huge, huge seller at the time. So there's so many copies floating around, and they're dirt cheap. I think this was $6. $6. I got this one for $5 or $6. So if you have a tape player and you have a CRT that you want to really get into it, you can do that. Otherwise, it's on Amazon Prime. You could find it on DVD. It's part of a bigger DVD set, though. But, it's a pretty good value for what it is. I'm going to set up affiliate links for as many of these as I can. So look in the description if you want to buy any of these. And if you buy them there, I'll get some money. Or maybe I won't be smart enough to figure that out. And you can just click in the description anyway. I'll have the links in there regardless, but I might get money. That'd be cool. Can I have a money? I'll take one money, please. I had a great time with Sweatin to the Oldies. I really did. I looked forward to it most of the time that I was doing it, especially towards the middle. Towards the end of the month, I started to get a little bit like, okay, I'm ready to move on to the next thing, because I was doing it 3 times a week for a whole month. But I had a good time with it for the majority of that. And it actually lifted me out of a bad mood a couple times. There's sometimes that I kind of went into it like, ugh. And then I came out of it feeling kind of okay. Richard Simmons is a really interesting character. And doing one of his fitness tapes really let me see him as that character instead of this sort of mythological figure that I wasn't super sure about what he was. But actually doing one of his tapes, the level of professionalism is off the charts. It's really, really good. I've done tapes before where it feels like someone recorded it in their basement or in a crappy gym and they had no script or anything. That's what I'm doing. There's a really interesting podcast about, there's a running toddler right above me. There's a really interesting podcast about Richard Simmons called Finding Richard Simmons by Headlong. I really recommend it. I'll put a link in the description. It's a lot of fun to listen to. Richard Simmons disappeared from the public eye like out of nowhere a few years ago and has just he just went away. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't do anything. He just went away. Some people had crazy ideas or whatever. It's a really interesting podcast. You should give it a shot if you listen to podcasts. Or if you don't, maybe that'll be your first podcast. That'd be cool. That was such a whole thing. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Next time, I'll be doing Buns of Steel, the original. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that when it comes out, it comes up on your phone and you click it and you watch it, and you're like, oh my God, he's so handsome. And then you hit like, and then you tell your friends to subscribe. And then it makes me go like, oh, that's nice. Oh, someone subscribed. That's very nice. See you next time. I might be a funny clown, but you know what's not funny? Shit.